See, you did such a spot-on impersonation of him. I wasn't sure if that was him or not.
Matt, you gassed me up, and I love it.
Hey everybody, I just posted the agenda in the voice chat. We will give a couple minutes before we kind of get rolling here. Just let people filter in. So hang tight.
How's everybody's Tuesday going?
Pretty good. We have some interesting people in the audience here, which I'm sure will come to light in a little bit. But yeah. I mean, Tuesday is always the best day because it's Treasury Tuesdays, as everybody knows.
I mean, it's obviously the most well-run event in our schedule, so.
Yeah, but not as many sexy voices as like Town Hall. Well, I guess you're not running those anymore, so never mind.
Yeah, but maybe I'll join the audience a little more frequently.
There you go.
Now that I'm healing up.
Hey, you sound a lot better. And we'll give one more minute and then we'll get really rolling here. So thanks everybody for joining. You know what? Let's just get rolling. I'll maybe take a minute or two to just kind of talk about how I see this agenda changing. I think previously we've been focusing on the recent event and news in the beginning, and then kind of getting more into our initiative collaboration discussion in the middle, and then it kind of ending with the open floor. I think I want to respect everybody's time a little bit more who may just be here for the updates or for just kind of getting their general thoughts out here. So what I did for this week, and maybe moving forward, we'll see how everybody likes it, is I moved the open floor to the middle and basically just allowed I guess in-depth discussion kind of towards the tail end. So that way, if people aren't interested, they can kind of just walk out and leave and miss out on the juicy good stuff. But yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and dive on into the recent event in news. Again, as always, feel free to hop in, and if you guys have anything that's newsworthy, whether it relates to Rook or not, please let me know. Again, this is just us trying to understand the landscape better. Kind of give some updates from our Treasury side, and just trying to look at really what's cool and happening out there, so that we're all better informed people. So, I guess the other thing I'll say is Index Co-op AMA that is still scheduled for 5/12, and let's see, I need to update this. They sent me an invite today. I'll get back on the time. I think they sent me an invite. But anyways, that is tentatively scheduled. I'm still kind of skeptical about doing this. I think our AMA with Stakewise was pretty low attended. Maybe it was because of the timing of it. It is at noon, so maybe that was a little early for some locations. But more to come on that. But maybe a question I have for people here, because obviously you're a little bit more into the treasury aspect and the financial aspects of it, or do people here think that they would like to see index co-op AMA, or are they pretty indifferent to it? People think it'd be valuable?
I don't see why not. Hopefully we can get some more turnout, but I think it couldn't hurt.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? I will take that as nobody's strongly about having it, but okay, I'll consider that. I'll see what else I can do. Really, my fear is just that we kind of take their time, and maybe they think poorly about attendance, and we'll see how it goes. But moving on down the line, again, just want to throw out there that the discretionary investment KIP is up on the forum. Would love to have your feedback on that. Again, that just allows the team to have a little bit, as well as the general DAO, to have a little bit more flexibility with how quickly we can move, rebalance, and take advantage of opportunities that may or may not pop up. So would love your feedback on that. Again, it definitely has some ramifications, about 5% of the treasury's balance or $5 million, whatever's greater. So, not overly material, but material enough for people to put their eyes on, I would say. The other thing that we can maybe spend more time with, if people would like, but definitely would love to have more comments and eyes on this. But Alcap put out the KIP to extend the boosting program. Essentially, what he wants to do is just make sure that our APR on our staking yield is extended to where, basically we have the volume running through Rook protocol that warrants a higher APR. So that way we're still kind of rewarding, stakers, but yet we're still just kind of using our CVX bribe. So would love kind of comments on that. And again, we could definitely have a deeper discussion here if anybody has any strong thoughts about that. Maybe I'll leave that towards the tail end of this section. The other thing that, again, I posted kind of as a teaser last week, but here's my treasury management framework. As you can see in the agenda, this is really just something that is not posted yet. I would love more comments and feedback on before kind of pushing it to go live on forum and putting it up for vote potentially for the SOFONs. Really, this is our way of establishing a shared mindset or culture around our treasury, whether it's from our risk tolerance perspective to establishing a minimum ROI. To really determining what our general composition of our treasury should be between directional, non-directional, and other types of assets. And hopefully it's a pretty comprehensive document that outlines really how we should operate as a treasury, as a DAO. And probably the most important fact is it really just provides parameters and bumper lanes for the SOFONs to kind of measure against and operate within. So that's really my main intent by this document. And again, would love more feedback, and I would love if this was a greater of a community thing rather than just Stubbs and I's, excellent work, as I like to think. So would love that. Another thing that we can talk about here is, and maybe Kyle can talk a little bit about as well, but, Kyle and I had the idea, as well as the rest of the team, of just, really, again, using our treasury as a way to integrate with other people and really just kind of draw it and be a magnet for people to say, hey, I would love for you to invest in our protocol from a strategic partnership perspective, or whether you can just kind of gain yield and, increase our TVL. And we would love to kind of increase order flow at the same time and deepen our relationship. So Kyle tweeted that out, as you can see in that link that's in there. And we've gotten pretty good response. Definitely have had some conversations with some teams, and we'll be setting up additional calls. So hopefully we can kind of make this a staple in our strategy moving forward. And anything you can kind of do to put more eyes on that would be welcomed as well. Kyle, anything on that you wanted to share? Did I hit on everything?
No, I think you've got that right. For us, it's still got to always make sense. If it's an integration that we're looking at as a part of this, we need to make sure that that probably that's going to be something that's going to be more easily realized, and then it also that investment strategy would probably want to make sure it aligns with our overall treasury kind of risk tolerance as well. So whether that is if we're deciding to keep things on L1 and we're looking at working with L1 protocols, or, if we're expanding into throwing money at, say on Arbitrum or Avalanche or another, or Optimism or something else, if that's a part of the treasury framework and things that we're good with as a DAO, that opens up more people we can talk with and work with as well.
It's all about coordination, right? So cool. Thanks for that, Kyle. Again, we'll hopefully be doing that on a continual basis, and really just trying to source great ideas as well as just integration opportunities. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to kind of hit on, hopefully you guys have all seen this. It's been really, really amazing to see, but also kind of has some complicating factors with regards to our LP withdrawal. But as you guys may have seen, in just the general Discord, but there's been essentially a giga whale. At one point in time, they were holding over $1 billion in assets, and I don't know what the updated number is, but I think they've ran about $80 million through Rook Protocol in very limited number of orders, and it's gone off without a hitch. So pretty impressive, and I don't know of any other protocols that are able to execute similar to what we've done, and so this is definitely going to highlight the power of what our team has built. But as part of that, one of the transactions actually leveraged a $1.3 million wrapped ETH flash loan. And if you recall from our LP research, really looking at how much flash loans are being leveraged from those, and what's the ROI on those, and how can we optimally pull those funds out, but still maintaining what the keepers and other Flashbot users, not Flashbot users, Flash loan users need to kind of leverage. So that $1.3 million is a decent amount, and still within our original parameters that we had for that wrapped ETH pool. I think the funds we were planning on leaving in there are about 1.8 million, if I recall. Again, that's posted on the forum. I can try to drop that link here in a second unless anybody has that handy. But so still a nice buffer, but I think it raises the question of, is this going to continue, and is this going to continue on even a larger scale? Like, I think if a Giga Whale like this is playing in our pools and leveraging things, I'm sure at some point others will. I'm sorry? Oh. Anyways, so yeah, if there's others that may wake up and see this as well, we could see people doing a similar thing, and maybe those pool funds that we're leaving in there are not sufficient. So I'm gonna get with Icebreaker who did the analysis with me, and we may be adding some additional buffer. I don't know. Just I need to consider that more. But these these massive transactions have really kind of woken our eyes up and said, do we need to reconsider? So that may impact how much deployable assets we have that are coming back from those LP positions. Tokamak Reactor. I think there's probably some other people that are here that could better speak to this, but Troy, did you want to talk about this a little bit? I know you have some good thoughts on this. And Kyle, I know you're working with them as well, so anything you have to say would be helpful.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so the Core 3 reactor voting has started yesterday at 3 p.m. Eastern and runs for 1 week, so it's over Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, next Monday. So essentially, how it works, it's similar to the CVX bribing. Redacted Cartel has purchased VoteMac, and it is now Hidden Hand Finance. And essentially, you are able to submit submit bribes for to receive a tokamak reactor. So the top 5 the highest vote getters will receive a reactor here. And essentially that will be a big liquidity pool that we could deploy to anywhere we want. And the interesting thing here is that we could then, you could then stake this T-Rook, it would be called, this T-Rook into our native staking app and get a APR from both Tokamak and the native coordination game staking. So there are some questions as far as, one, is it, if we make it so it's just the T-Rook that can be staked, sorry, my dog is crying heavily right now, but if we make it so just T-Rook can be staked natively in the app, we do have a little bit of an issue there because we are then relying on Tokamak's security, smart contract security. So if there's an issue with their smart contracts and those LPs can get drained, it's obviously a huge issue for us. We could possibly make it so you could stake either one, so users could choose to do it. But this does seem to be a pretty good solution to our liquidity issues that the project has. I think everyone could agree that it's pretty severe.
Cool. Thanks for that, Troy. And indeed, if you have anything else you want to say, just stop me. But yeah, I think it's a valid question. It's something that we are exploring more. And if anybody has interest or just in more in-depth knowledge of that project and just everything that's going on, please raise your hand and we'll gladly bring you in for those discussions. But yeah, again, this is kind of still under consideration, and I think consideration needs to happen fast because I think there's 6 days left, I believe.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a time crunch here. Unfortunately, we cannot bribe with our native tokens. Ideally we could just grab some Rook from the strategic reserves, and Jesus, sorry, my dog is just straight howling. We could grab some Rook from strategic reserves and use that for bribes, but it looks like we need to use, there are a couple non-stable coins, CVX, unfortunately we're locked there, and Aave, and I think Luna, but other than that, it's mostly ETH, Bitcoin, and stables. So it would have to come from our treasury. We could then, unload some strategic reserves in the sale or to replenish it, however we want to do it. We could, maybe utilize the wrap BTC that we have that's kind of not being put to work anywhere. But we are definitely on a time crunch here. Yeah, definitely on a time crunch. So we kind of need to make some moves quick if we want to focus on this.
Cool. Thanks, Troy. Again, if anybody has passion for that, let us know, and we'll loop you in. But I think we've covered that one. I mentioned this last week, and I added it again because there is some. I guess how do I want to say this? There are some people that may be listening that I think could speak to this if they chose to. But really, there was a researcher that came out with a pretty good in-depth review of some things that have been happening over at Maple Finance. As you guys know, we have about $3.5 million deposited there. And, it's definitely some questionable things, and they haven't really given us a lot to kind of work with. So still kind of investigating that, still want to have, more in-depth conversations with the Maven/Maple team. But, I encourage you guys to all read that and kind of get a feel for that for yourselves, for sure. And if you have any strong thoughts about it, let us know. Anybody have any thoughts on that or anything else that we discussed above?
I did want to revisit the proposal that AlCap put on the forum. Azom posted a comment on there, which I think is, I kind of like his general thought process, and he's basically saying that we use a portion of the CVX revenue to keep it at to keep a floor on the APR at 20%. And then as CG continues to pick up volume, the amount of CVX revenue we'd be needing to delegate towards boosting the APR would kind of depreciate over time. And I know AlCap, I think he's in here. I'm curious if he has any thoughts or anything along those lines.
Hey guys. Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of selecting a floor for the APR. I'm definitely in favor of selecting a floor above 10%. Closer to 20% would be perfect, but might be a bit too much. I do have hopes to be in the middle. The concerns around my proposal were mostly that the CVX will mean the team might want to sell it in a particular moment if the CVX multiplies in value. So rather than choosing exclusively CVX, we could decide to keep a floor to the APR mainly from CVX, but if the team decides to sell it or the community wants so, we could replace the boosting with another source of yield. I'm definitely in favor of that. As the important thing is to hold the APR above 15%, in my view.
So I would like to just, if we want to set an APR floor and the price stays at $100, sure. But if the price goes to $500, how are we going to be able to set that floor long term?
Yeah. Feel free to interrupt me, AlCap. But I think what I was saying in my comment on the forum is instead of trying to set these parameters that may put us in a pickle, I think just extending the time period on a frequent basis is probably our best bet, because we can basically assess the environment from multiple ends and perspectives in real time, so that way we're not kind of locked in on something in particular. So that's what I'd be in more of favor of versus adding parameters around. I think always trying to back into some APR is going to be really tough, because there's so many different attributes and factors that could drastically change, that it's just almost better just to focus on the time frame, more than anything, at least from my perspective. And again, this is my opinion, not the team's.
Yeah, are there examples of any coins that can sustain a 15 to 20% APR that is not through just an inflationary mechanism? I mean, that seems super difficult.
I was thinking that 15 to 20% to compared to the current value of Rook. I'm definitely in favor of reducing the APR if the Rook multiplies in value, which still has to happen, but hopefully it will. So we could start from a certain amount per week as a base floor for the APR, and even if the Rook multiplies, the boost amount will remain the same basically, and the APR will slowly go down. But hopefully the volume will go up, and like this, the APR will still be nice. Does it make sense?
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
You hear me? Hello.
Stubbs, if you're talking, I think your mic is very low. If you can,
How about now?
still pretty low.
Thing. Okay, so my question is like 15% feels good. But like I don't know if any of us know if, being at 15% is significantly like will drive volume and staking rather than 10%, or what the difference between 20% is, or any of that. So to try and arbitrarily put a floor when we don't know how much benefit there is to that, I think doesn't make much sense to me.
Is there a way for us to see how these have impacted buying? If we look, we're now at a week or so or whatever of 20+% APR here. Is there a way to look at how that has impacted, and if is there realistic expectations of if this continues, what are we supposed to kind of get out of it as a DAO?
I'm not sure that anyone is buying Rook because of the APR. I mean, there are definitely other tools that give better APR, but I do think that are less sellers for sure if the APR is good. I mean, if we reduce the APR right now with 50%, I bet there will be many that are going to unstake it for sure. Most of the projects that I'm following managed to hold like 30 to 40% of the total circulated supply staked for an APR less than 10%. That's for sure. So 10% would be definitely good. Not necessary. It doesn't have to be higher.
So,
and are those projects are generating 10% of their market cap and outside value and returning that to the project? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Or are they have a pool of tokens internally that they're just distributing?
So that's a good question. Most of the projects use inflation for the APR, but in the same time they use other mechanisms like buyback with a certain amount of the revenue. So it very much depends on each project.
Yeah, because the inflationary stuff is really just a penalty if you're not staking more than any kind of reward, because you're just diluting non-stakers. So that's not what we're doing here, though. And like we could boost from strategic reserves, but then again, we're just putting more Rook onto the market that was not on the market. So I don't know how that really helps us.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to do, El Cap, and I think it is valuable and something we need to consider. Understanding what's the balance between staking rewards and just like overall performance of our price, and what we have flowing through Rook protocol as we hope to ramp that up. But again, with so many attributes that can impact APR, I would strongly be against any kind of minimum that we have. And again, I think that can be addressed if we just extend this with certain time periods, and then if our APR dips and our price action hasn't seen a lot of upside, then and we feel like it's still very critical that we maintain high level of APR, we can just extend that again, or hope to extend that again through governance, or maybe we can come up with some other mechanism. But that's what my suggestion would be from a from an extension perspective.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There could be a middle ground. But I would like to see that, let's say that our treasury is going to generate $10 million per year. Just a number. I see literally no reason why we wouldn't use 2 million or 20-30% of the whole yield generated per year to give back to stakers. Like we keep saying that the token holders are the community and they own the DAO, but basically we don't own much. I mean, it's not like we can liquidate the treasury overnight and pocket some money. So 20 to 30% of the yield generated per year going to staker, I don't see how that's gonna be a bad idea. Even if long term will be just a small fraction of the APR, because maybe Rook will multiply 10% or 10x.
So what you're wanting to do is take 10, 20% of the average yield of the treasury and give it to stakers. What I'd like to know is, outside of removing Rook from the open market, so does that mean that we're buying back Rook with treasury yields? Because treasury yields won't be in Rook for anything. So there's that part of it. And then the flip side of that is, if you look at what's, also going to be driving success for us, which is people using the protocol. It's people using the app, it's the integrations, and it's the order flow that's feeding into our tokenomics of paying stakers, burning, contributing to the treasury. Staking Rook doesn't really play as big of a part in that. So me personally, I'd like to use, say, that same amount of money to incentivize people to use our protocol more, which seems like that would have better long-term effects for the overall health of the project.
All right, sounds fair, but why can't we do both? Like, I believe that we have to try every single way to grow the community and eventually grow the token price, because 90% of the people here are expecting the price to go up. Like, we do have to try everything, and out of 10 millions, we can use 20% for something, 20% for another thing, and there's still a lot of money left to grow the treasury, to buy businesses. I don't know. We have tons of money.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the ROI is there. And if there's the right case that taking treasury funds and giving it to stakers has the right ROI that we're trying to intend, instead of us just kind of having the argument that it seems like the right thing to do. Maybe that's enough for us to do it. I would just like to see some research into, like, hey, this is a good use of DAO funds for these specific reasons, and here's the data to back that up. And I don't know, that's just how my mind works on this.
Yeah, perfectly agree. This is why we can vote and ask the community, hey, would you like a higher APR, or you will accept a lower one? Yeah, definitely. But a good APR is definitely marketing thing. Like, you can advertise it, definitely, and people usually first buy the token of a project, then eventually use it. I mean, 90% of the people. And I do think that if the token itself is attractive and gives back profits, people will tell other people and the community will grow and eventually will be somebody in this crypto space.
So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the two main drivers of kind of benefiting or kind of the return on this investment is better marketing and taking care of the community. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't want to say either of those things aren't important, because they definitely are important. And as we can all see, that I guess both of those things do need to get improved as well.
Yeah, and just to repeat myself, I'm not saying we have to use 100% of the generated yield per year, just a small portion of it, a small portion, enough to make everyone happy, but not too much to stop us from growing and scale the business.
Yeah, and I think we're on the same page there. I mean, like, we've talked about using the CVX stuff, this CVX yield to boost staking moving forward. I just want to make sure that we all know that if the price of Rook goes up, the APR will drop significantly. Like, I mean, it's just not something that we can keep the floor on, because that $150,000 every 2 weeks from CVX or whatever, all of a sudden is getting split between a lot more money in Rook, right? If we went to $200, $300.
Yeah,
So
if you think about it, we buy what 4,000 or 2,000 or 1,800 Rook every 2 weeks. If we double in price, then all of a sudden that's only, say, 900 every week, and people are like, oh my gosh, our APR just dropped by 50%. It's like, yes, but the token price also doubled. So the APR percent, feels like it'll be very hard to control, and that's hoping that CVX revenues remain consistent, which they're hovering right now. We saw a little bit of a decline this week, but if anything happens in the CVX ecosystem that were to change that, that would be a problem to this as well. And so I want to just make sure that we're going to be able to execute on whatever we agree to.
Yeah, I think these are all great points, and I definitely want to continue this discussion. Maybe we can have further discussions on this during town hall, because I do want to respect the other things that we want to get to. But Alcap, I wanted to kind of give you the last say if you had anything else you wanted to kind of hit on.
Just one thing, I was thinking at CVX to build a keep around it, because it's super straightforward and it's something that generates yield right now. Definitely in 1-2 months from now we could have something more general, but right now we still explore other yield opportunities, and CVX is much easier to control for now. So yeah, that's why I choose CVX. That's all.
Cool. Well, thank you. And just for some context, to Deet's points, I think the CVX bribes were about a little over 7% lower than the previous round. So just something to keep in mind as well. But I guess moving on, unless anybody else has anything to say about any of our recent news or events that we kind of hit on real fast, or anything that they wanted to hit on that's newsworthy. So I'll give you guys a second to kind of raise your hand for that. Otherwise, they'll go to a similar thing, which is, I guess you could just say open floor, which is something similar. So here's really for anybody who has a new idea, has really strong thoughts about anything besides something we've already talked about. I know it looks like Stubbs already added some things about the dashboard. So let's go ahead and let him talk about that. And then if you have anything else, please let us know. So Stubbs, take it away.
Alrighty. I'm going to throw the link in the chat really quick, but oh, that was for the CVX ones. So I've been working on both the Treasury and looking at our CVX investment. I added a bunch of stuff to the Treasury, and I just want to make sure that people are knowing that, like, if you have any questions or specific information that you want to kind of get teased out that's not there that should be, throw it into this Google Doc that I created, and that way we can just kind of have a running list of all the things that should be on the dashboards that will help us all understand what's going on with the Treasury, what's going on with our investments. Because I know that, like, sometimes even with the CVX, it was like, oh, was it a good buy? Was it a bad buy? And unless we have the data to say that we can refer to, it's just all feelings. So even kind of like with the floor for the APY, we all think that we need to do something. Potentially it would help. We don't have any data to support it, so it's really hard to throw millions of dollars at it. So check out both those dashboards. Let me know if I've missed something, and if I have, or you want something more, throw it into the Google Doc.
Cool. Thank you, Stubbs. Yeah, Stubbs has been absolutely crushing it with the dashboards and really kind of giving us greater insight into all things Treasury. So I'm really excited to see what he can kind of cook up. And again, just to kind of reemphasize what he said, there is a dashboard request link that we both just dropped. But if you have something in mind that you want more information of in real time, definitely use that. And I think that that'll be a good source for us to kind of continue this process of just greater transparency and knowledge. Cool. So anybody else have anything that's kind of open floor section that they want to hit on? I guess everybody just loves listening to me talk a lot, so that's good. Cool. Well, again, here's next section where it's supposed to be the kind of the bulk of this, but I think we spent a lot of time talking about some other juicy stuff. So, I guess from the perspective of the ETH researchers and people who are interested in how we deploy our ETH in this kind of little research project, feel free to stay. For anybody who's not really interested in kind of the weeds, I guess you could say, or what we've been doing from a research perspective, feel free to kind of dip on out. But thanks for everybody that's been coming. But I guess assuming that nobody else has anything else to say from what we discussed or just things they want to get out there, I guess general update on where we stand from our ETH deployment. I would say the ETH researchers, Wes, Breeze, Stubbs, Starfire, and myself included, all have put a lot of great research into these different protocols. As you can see, some links to those. We made some good headway with kind of a working session last week that we did out in the open. I think even Al Cap joined, had some really good input. But really, we came up with, I would say, an early stage weighting matrix, kind of a scorecard, and you'll see in that tab let me drop it here. This ETH matrix, again, this is just like super basic. We're going to polish this up and definitely have this into our larger proposal, which we're going to start compiling very soon. But what we did, we kind of set out, and this is still nothing finalized, and something we wanted to kind of get input from the greater community on was we really came up with 5 large attributes, and then we understand that there's probably sub-attributes that are within those. And we kind of came up with scores associated with those that we could then kind of come up with a scorecard for all of these different opportunities. And so, just running through those, we had trustlessness and concentration, priority number 1, tokenomics number 2, security and risk number 3, composability and liquidity number 4. So a couple comments on each of those, just high level. And again, any ETH researchers, just please pop in if you'd like. But security and risk, I think we'd all probably think that is number 1, but really in the end, all of these protocols that we're kind of exploring all have multiple audits done. From the perspective of what we can tell from a security and risk standpoint, really there's not a lot of distinguishment between those. So that's kind of why that's number 3. So just putting that out there. Trustlessness, concentration. I think we all felt pretty strongly that we're here for a decentralized world computer. We're here for decentralization. If we want just centralization, we can just go on over to Google or Amazon Web Services or something like that. So that was a big thing we consider, which I think does have a much larger impact on the end result. For example, Lido has about 90% of the liquid staking market. Our personal opinions were we don't want to be a contributing factor in that. I think, based off of what we're considering about allocating amongst all three providers, Stakewise, Lido, and Rocket Pool, I think that they all are relatively trustless. There's a different spectrum. There's different ends of the spectrum, and obviously concentration of that is a big part of that. And so that's why we felt it was probably best to put it number one, because the differences between all of those were pretty large. And then kind of highlighting that in contrast with tokenomics, like the tokenomics of it, those aren't super different. E-staking yields are all relatively similar if you look at just overall yields in relation to the overall marketplace of every different thing you can get in DeFi. But that's kind of number two, and you can kind of see those sub attributes there. And then composability and liquidity, we just thought those are a little bit hand in hand, because if you have the most liquidity, you're relatively composable. But to highlight some differences, Stakewise is relatively not composable in the sense of there's not a lot of like really creative derivatives that you can use with your SETH2, versus with Lido, there's a tremendous amount of options, as well as Rocket Pool. There's a lot of options to kind of get really creative with these layer 2 derivatives, I guess you could call them. So that was really kind of how we figured out how we're going to take the next step. And so now it's just about putting pen to paper on how we're going to actually score each of these protocols in relation to these attributes. So maybe I'll pause there before I lose my voice. And does anybody have any strong thoughts about whether they like this, how we've prioritized these different attributes, or if anything major they feel like maybe needs to change? I know we have some people, at least one Rocket Pool person here. So
yeah, hey, this is Danilo from Rocket Pool community, not from the core team. I was just looking at the spreadsheet. I don't know if bug bounties should be included in there. We do have a bug bounty. I think I don't want to speak for any of the other protocols. I don't know, but I know we do have one. And we were actually internally discussing of raising it since our TVL has gone up. So that's just one small comment.
Cool, and welcome again. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And number of validators under decentralization or trustlessness / concentration. Just not to be pedantic, but just it's actually what you're really looking for is number of nodes. Number of validators is number of 32 ETH deposits onto the beacon chain. Number of nodes is number of distinct machines, entities, people. I guess Coinbase owns more than one machine, but it's a better measure of decentralization. So yeah, node count would be better reflective there.
Cool. Thanks for clarifying that. And again, welcome. We're happy to have you here.
Sure.
Anybody else have any thoughts about the kind of scoring and attributes we have? Perfect. Well, I'm glad to hear that. In the end, like, this is subjective. Like, once we get to this stage, we've done our research, and now it's kind of we're at the subjective point, and I think we have flexibility here, and we could probably move these around and break apart different attributes and come up with more sub attributes. But in the end, this is more of an optics perspective, just to make sure we've done our due diligence. We've kind of assessed all the different things that we probably should be assessing. So now it's just about putting it all in one spot and making it very clear and comprehensive for everybody to know that they can feel safe that we've done our diligence. With how we're going to deploy like these hard-earned assets that we have in our treasury that have really been idle for too long. So we will continue doing that, and I'm glad to see that nobody has any strong hesitations about that. E3 researchers, do you guys have any comments about anything here discussed?
I am curious, just from like anyone in this call, like, do they have a preference on like how much of our ETH that we should allocate to these staking derivatives, keeping in mind that a lot of these these assets are really flexible in that we can enter and exit the derivatives basically with little friction, because they all have liquidity pools paired against ETH or another derivative that allows you to exit from there to ETH. So I'm curious if anyone has any strong feelings about allocation size. I'll take that as a no.
Well, as a community member, my thought would be, because they are so easily maneuverable, both from a risk standpoint as well as just a liquidity standpoint. Sorry, I have a crying baby in the background. Sorry. But really, in the end, like, these are things that we can kind of get into fairly quickly and get out of fairly quickly, and we don't have to worry about there being like political or relational risk about like saying, okay, if we pull out, is this going to end a relationship or something like that. They all have kind of, or most of them have really creative composable options where if we wanted to take on more risk, then we could, do some other creative things with that. And I want to hit on that in a second. But really, in the end, like, my initial thought is probably deploying at least, like, I'd say only leaving maybe 25 to 40% at the most of our ETH in the treasury and not into these investments. And then, if we feel like we want to scale up more or scale down, like, we can do that fairly quickly. But that's my initial gut reaction to that. And again, with the ETH researchers, we'll nail that down more specifically. But just wanted to see if anybody else feels like that seems like a valid range, or if they have strong thoughts about too high or too low. Which I think we got to answer because nobody said anything in the Starfire. So I was just talking to myself. So okay,
I'll put high or low in the voice chat, and thumbs up or thumbs down, or 100 for it's good.
Yeah, if one of the mods wants to do like a poll, maybe just looking at different 25 to 15 to 10% ranges, that'd be good. I think if somebody could do that, maybe we could get a little poll action here. Otherwise, we could do it at a different time as well. But I guess where was I going to go with this next? Oh yeah, it's another thing I want to talk about, how I'm going to write this KIP. I think with regards to how we use these composable options, I think I'm going to leave the language in the KIP where we're just talking about how we allocate between these layer one, and I know that's not the right word to use in this space, but the base layer, the foundational investments from an ETH deployment standpoint. And then I'm going to leave it up to the group that's been working on this, including myself and just the core team, obviously with feedback from the community, but to keep things nimble, allowing us to have discretion about how we take on additional risk, but by, do we take, some of that base, our ETH, and put it into some other protocol and stake it and get additional yield out of that. And so then, in the end, all we're doing is just taking on additional smart contract risk. So that's how I plan on writing the KIP. Does anybody have any hesitations with that?
No real hesitation. And again, this is Danilo from Rocket Pool, but I think what you're saying and hearing the prior conversation, about issuing CVX rewards, there is a current Curve CVX reward LP that you could stake both your wrapped staked ether from Lido, opposite of the Rocket Pool ETH. So it's a WST ETH/RETH pool on Curve. I can link that for you guys. We call it the Scrabble pool, but it's currently, I think it's currently, you know what? I don't want to give you the wrong APR. I thought it was around 20% CVX rewards.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of exciting things that we can do with that. And again, all it is additional smart contract risk, at least, from my understanding. And so it sounds like nobody here had any hesitations about writing the KIP proposal to allow us to have discretion with how we risk up or risk down. And so what I wanted to just verify, I guess, on top of that is saying, from my understanding, it's like Aave, Curve, and Yearn are kind of those other platforms where we can take on additional risk, at least from a base layer. And so I was thinking about including those in the proposal as well as just ones that are preliminarily approved. And so again, this is really just more about smart contract risk and whether you feel like we can rely on those protocols. My personal opinion is that they could have stood the test of time. They are probably one of the most respected protocols in the space, and so I don't have a hesitation in my mind about doing that. Especially because we are kind of diversifying across different options. So, does anybody have any issues or heartburn with any of those protocols in particular? Great. You guys are making this job very easy. Cool. So I think that was most of the things that I wanted to hit on from a community optics ETH deployment standpoint. Kind of getting buy-in. Stubbs, Starfire, Breeze, Wes. Anybody else have any thoughts, or any of you guys have anything that we need to hit on from writing the proposal perspective to researching or things that we need to hit on or address?
Yeah, for sure. I'll chime in here. At least with Tokemak, I'm not too sure if it makes sense to use ETH on Tokemak if we decide to go the reactor route. So just because we would be exposed to more risk on that eco as well. So
as far as Rocket Pool goes, I think we kind of covered that well. I think you explained where you're kind of coming from for writing that KIP pretty well. Again, I don't really have any more input besides that.
Cool. Well, I think we'll probably have another working group pending that the researchers have time, and I'll get with them. And again, we'll do that here in the open. I'll post something in the updates channel, just letting people know that we will be having that. So if people want to kind of hop in and chat with that, or give their input, happy to have more people kind of putting their eyes and ears on it. So let's see, anything else? So I think I hit on that. Again, I'm just going to reemphasize, and it's probably more important than ever, and I know Starfire's already started really taking a deep dive into this, but a future initiative from these calls and something I really, as an organization and a DAO and a community, want to start focusing on is what's our strategy from an L2 perspective. We know it's coming, and I don't see a situation where people live on main layer for the rest of their lives. And with the Optimism airdrop, it's I think it's going to kickstart something really kind of big from an L2 perspective, and start this and really kickstart this thriving ecosystem. And I want exposure to it. I want to make sure that we have the right investments. I want to make sure that we have a strategy for how we put our liquidity there or not. And if we do, to what level, and understanding those risks and reward opportunities. So if you have any strong thoughts or passions, or you have a lot of research already done, or even just have resources that you can kind of point to and help us get a good start to it, please get involved. Please let me know, and we'd be happy to kind of loop you in on that. But that's definitely going to be a very big priority for myself, and just the Treasury and the core team as a whole. So last chance for anybody to kind of throw their ideas out there, or ask any questions.
So I have a question about, right now, we've got about $30 million in ETH between the wrapped ETH, ETH and in the liquidity pools, and then just in the Treasury. So, if we're not including the Rook, that's about 50% of our Treasury. Are we, at what point, if at all right now, would we want to look at those allocations? Because if we're, 40% of half or whatever percentage of the ETH we want to put between these pools, since ETH is such a big part of our Treasury, that's a ton of our Treasury that's in these. I think that's something that we just need to make sure that we're all considering as well, so it's not just thought of in this black box outside of the whole Treasury framework.
Yeah, I think I think it's a great point, and definitely something my treasury management framework tries to look at, and I'll definitely, even though it's not live on the forum, but I'll definitely be measuring against that, as being, I guess, a steward of the treasury, and I think in the proposal we'll have background information on just where our treasury position is at, and so that we're making sure that we're giving context to the readers, and that way they fully understand the gravity of what we may or may not be implementing. But yeah, from the perspective of like a now versus then, I think getting the ETH researchers together, really understanding the allocations between, or the I guess the total amount we're going to be deploying as it relates to the treasury, and then coming up with those allocations is probably our next step. So that way, instead of it's like all of us here just trying to figure out what we want to do, we at least have some well thought out ideas that we can then kind of put forth in front of the community to then get buy-in, or maybe even buy out. So that's my plan for next steps from a ETH deployment standpoint. Cool. Well, unless anybody else has anything to say, I really appreciate you guys coming out to our, I think, 4th weekly Treasury Tuesdays. It seems to be getting bigger every time, and really appreciate all the feedback and the time. So thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Have a good one.